Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bobo Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Carlin, and our special guest today, Jim Cerny, from Forever Blueshirts. And obviously, you know, this is a guy that's been around the New York Rangers for years. So, Jim, we really appreciate you taking the time and coming on with us today.
Absolutely. You make me sound kind of old, but you know, I was just doing an interview with Neil Smith last week, and we were reminiscing, and we were like, wow, we've known each other for like 34, 35 years, you know? So yeah, I guess I've been around for a little bit, have a little history with the Rangers.
Exactly. But hey, that's not a bad thing too. And I loved that interview with Neil Smith, by the way. You know, one of my favorite Rangers characters from the past, and obviously, you know, he's got the hardware to back it up with the championship ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? He was spot on in you know, when we were previewing the trade deadline here for the Rangers. He said you got to be really, really cautious and careful if you're Chris Drury, because you've got such a good thing going this season. You know, you're easily one of the top teams, not only in the East, but the entire NHL. Great chemistry in that room. You don't want to mess a good thing up. And he went back to 1994 when he said, you know, we made all those trades at the deadline, but take a closer look. Stefan Matteau and Brian Noonan had already played for Mike Keenan. There was a history there. Glenn Anderson and Craig McTavish were former Edmonton Oilers. There were a bunch of former Edmonton Oilers that they had won, you know, Stanley Cups with that were currently on the Rangers. And you fast forward to this deadline, and there's a little bit of that going on. They needed to fill the 3C role. They get Alex Wenberg, who kind of grew up, went to high school with Eric Gustafson and Mika Zibanejad, played with Artemi Panarin in Columbus. So he knows some of the key characters on the team, has a relationship there. So, you know, I like that that's the approach Chris Drury took. You know, it didn't work what happened last trade deadline, right? Bringing in the bigger names and the superstars. Here, you're looking more for a fit. And again, going back to what Neil said, part of that is you don't want to mess up a good thing. You want to improve it, and you certainly needed to improve your depth and fill a couple holes in that lineup and roster. But you don't want to mess up a good thing. It's such a high wire act. So now we'll see if Chris Drury got it right.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. You mentioned the Alex Wenberg deal, and I feel like after the last couple of years, Ranger fans, including myself, we've kind of gotten a little spoiled with the amount of deals that Drury has made going into the deadline. Obviously, the really splashy moves last year, and then the year before, just, you know, catching lightning in a bottle with Kopp and Vetrano and all those guys. But this year, I feel like Alex Wenberg is almost being underappreciated by the Ranger fans, because I feel like we thought that it was going to be the first of a couple of moves to happen. But you know, even though they did get into a couple other guys that we'll get into in a second, I feel like Alex Wenberg fits into this team perfectly on that third line. He's really going to improve the team defense, and just having him out there, this is a guy that's got a little bit of skill he can add to. And, you know, I feel like if they do keep Kakko on that third line, that there's a chance maybe, you know, that line with Cully, Wenberg, and a potential for Kakko there could really be a nice third line there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what Peter Laviolette decides to do here, because Wenberg pretty much is a defensive center, defensive forward. So yes, he's got some offensive skill. Yes, he's been a top six guy, you know, in his career. But you're right. He slots in much better in a 3C role. and being a checking guy. And that's what he was in Columbus. He was a guy that was lined up against the other team's best lines night in and night out. So it's a role he's familiar with. And if he takes on that role here, the decision Peter Laviolette has to make is, well, are Kako and Will Cooley the best fits if it's going to be a checking line? So that's a difficult decision for him. Barclay Goodrow, you could argue, and Jimmy Vesey are more suited to be checking wingers. Even Jack Roslovic could be a fit on that third line with Wenberg. But then what do? You're going to put Kako now on the fourth line. So it's not quite figured out there yet what they're going to do. But talking about Wenberg being underappreciated, it's probably true. Listen, I would have preferred to see Adam Henrique be that guy because I think he gives you more on the offensive end, and the Rangers do need more scoring from their bottom six, more consistent scoring from the bottom six, and Henrique would give you that, while at the same time being a good, smart defensive presence, and Henrique brings that. But listen, at the cost we saw that it took to get Adam Henrique as a rental, what Edmonton paid, Drury probably did the right thing, dropping out of that and kind of going to the next option, which is Wenberg, who's affordable option and fits the role of what a third center on the New York Rangers needs to be. But again, nothing's perfect. You got to figure out, it's the jigsaw puzzle. Now you got to get the pieces together. You got 20 games, to figure that out. And one other thing I'll say about Wenberg is, because now this improves their depth, if something happens in their top six on a long playoff run, or even during the regular season, but during a long playoff run, he's a guy that has the experience, that has played top 6 minutes before. And no, he's not Mika Zibanejad or Vincent Trocheck offensively, but yet you'd be comfortable moving him up into those roles should there be an injury or what have you. So that's kind of an extra little thing that hopefully you don't have to go to down the road, but it is there.
No doubt about it. And, you mentioned his, ability to slot up in the lineup, and also even talking about Jack Roslovic that you brought up, who they got from the Blue Jackets for a fourth rounder. That's a pretty good value pick, if you ask me, especially a forward that's been hot, and he can play center and wing. So if you do, maybe because of injury or something, have to bump Wenberg up in the lineup, you could always slot Roslovic into the middle, and or potentially even keep Brodzinski around. I'm a big fan of Brodzinski. What do you think about how that bottom six now looks, with the potential for those guys and Brodzinski staying in there, and Edstrom and Rimpey? I mean, there's a lot of people in that mix for Peter Laviolette to choose from now.
Yeah, and that goes back to the word depth, right? Now they have a lot of depth again. And they were a deep team this season going in, but you lose Philip Hedl. He only played 10 games this season. Now Blake Wheeler's out for the season as well. So that really bit into their depth. So what the Rangers have done here is restock, and then you hope, that a Matt Rempe or an Adam Edstrom, let's say those are your extra forwards, or you could rotate one or the other in. That's pretty good, because they've shown that they can play here, and they bring an element, gritty element, a size element, a physicality element to the lineup, each of them. And certainly, Rempe, there's a little something special about him that the guys feed off of, and how productive he is, the amount of hits per minute that he plays, per shift that he plays, things of that nature. But if you're a Stanley Cup winning team, do you think you're going 4 rounds with those two being your wings on the fourth line? No. I think that they're better suited being, inserting here and there, or just being the depth guys. So again, the depth has improved greatly for them. If they roll out a fourth line of Barclay Goodrow, Johnny Brodzinski, and Jimmy Vesey, that is about as good a fourth line as you're going to get from any team that's going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But again, the question becomes, well, are you going to create a pure checking line centered by Alex Wenberg? And that's where you have to start figuring out, okay, well, if that's the case, how does Capo Caco fit into that? Is Capo Caco really now more going to be that first line right wing? And does Roslovic come back and play with Wenberg in a more checking line role? I would assume Jack's going to be on the first line for a little bit because they want to get Mika Zibanejad going 5-on-5. And with Roslovic's speed, with his kind of a shoot first mentality, even though he hasn't scored a lot this season, he can help open things up, I think, for Zibanejad. So I think he's going to get a look there. But in the long run, the big picture, it really is in question right now what the bottom six is going to look like. My initial gut reaction is you put Wenberg between Cooley and Kako, and you put Jack up on the top line and see how that all plays out. And then VC, Goudreau, and Brodzinski are your fourth line, but work in Rempe. In fact, I know this is pre-recording, but it looks like Rempe's going to be in the lineup tonight on the fourth line, and Brodzinski's going to be a scratch. But I don't know that that's the full-time answer. And I'm not sure Peter Laviolette believes it's the full-time answer either. So again, time will tell. You got 20 games to figure it out down the stretch.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, that even if Brodzinski's not in the lineup tonight, I don't think that's a bad sign going forward, because Laviolette even said the other day that he, going down the stretch here, he wants to make sure that even the depth guys are getting games in there just to stay fresh and just to stay in that, momentum. So I do feel like that there really isn't much of a better suited coach to juggle these lineup decisions. I'm a big fan of Laviolette. It didn't knock my socks off, last summer when they hired him. I've had a lot of respect for Peter Laviolette over the years, but the job that he's done in this first season for the Rangers has really just been phenomenal. What have you thought about his first year on the job here?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with anything. There really haven't been any missteps for Peter Laviolette. And, listen, I've known Peter for a long time, back to his days with the Islanders when he first became a head coach in the NHL. He is a measured guy. He doesn't overreact. He'll get his team's attention if they need it. But, he's a pretty even-keeled guy. He trusts his locker room. This is pretty much a veteran team. A lot of good veteran leaders on this team. And I think he's shown trust in that. But I think two things came into play when they went to training camp this year and why they got off to such a good start. One is Laviolette comes in, different approach from Gerard Gallant, a different structure and style on the ice. He's a respected guy, Stanley Cup ring. And again, a very even-keeled approach, really good communicator. You'll see him on the ice, at practices, taking guys individually, talking with them. You hear from the players about how he communicates really well individually and to the group behind the scenes as well. So there's that aspect. And then the other aspect was, well, the Rangers, I really believe this too. Maybe the best thing that happened to them last season was that they got bounced in the first round by New Jersey, and they got kicked in the teeth, and they kicked themselves in the teeth in that series, right? So they went back, and this core group all came back again this season, but they came back on a mission. And if Peter Laviolette says, you know what, this is what we need to do. We're going to change these things on the ice. We're going to be more committed in the neutral zone. We're going to play tighter back in our own zone. These guys were going to buy in. I really, really believe that. And I thought that's why they got off to such a good start at the beginning of the season. So it's a combination of the coach, respect for the coach, and a fact of, oh boy, we're ticked, at what we did in the playoffs last year. So I think you combine all that, and that has really fed into this season, certainly the start to the season. But he's a steady hand. And I think that's why he's been around so long in this league, is there's just, I love the fact that there's no overreacting with him. and he's made some smart moves. Like he and Benny Allaire, decided to give Igor, a week away from games, around the All-Star break. Let him work on his game. It could be a long-term gain and a short-term. Well, we'll see. As it turned out, Jonathan Quick was winning every night, so it worked out perfectly fine. But they were willing to take that chance, in part because of Quick, but because, again, sees the big picture here, and he knows what he's got, and he pushes the right buttons. And listen, he's done a terrific job. It is really, really hard to argue with or nitpick with anything. Giving Lafreniere the chance, on that line to play with Panarin at the beginning of the year. It was Hedl, but obviously it's been Trocheck most of the season, and stick with it. Not just, all right. I mean, granted, Lafreniere got off to a good start, but there have been times where you could have pulled Lafreniere off that line, but he hasn't. He is stuck with it. He believes in Kreider and Zibanejad, even though there have been the struggles 5-on-5. The focus has been more, let's find the right wing for those guys, not let's break up, Mika and Kreider. And he's shown faith, in Will Cooley. Will Cooley's been on that third line and played regular minutes all season and has rewarded the Rangers with that. He's given opportunities to the Johnny Brodzinskis and the Matt Rempes. Listen, it is really hard to nitpick and find anything where you could say, oh, what is he thinking, this season. It's certainly been a good one for him, no matter where this ends up, down the road.
Yeah, it's true. And, you mentioned the Rangers getting bounced against the Devils last year. And the way they came out this year almost reminds me of the determination of how the Tampa Bay Lightning were after they had that record-setting regular season and then got bounced in 4 straight in the first round and then came back. And you just saw the next couple of years, they just had that drive. And even though they didn't have a coach change like the Rangers did, I think the players, the veteran players that make up the team, really just came out with that, that it doesn't matter what's going to get in their way this year. They want to get back to the playoffs, and that's where it all starts again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll take you back 30 years ago. I remember after the 92-93 Rangers season, I was covering the team, and I remember we were in Rye. The season was over. It was the end of season wrap-up interviews with the players and everything. And I remember Mark Messier said, not just once, but maybe about 3 times, that what a firm believer he is. And then, I'm paraphrasing 30 years later, but what a firm believer he is in a really good team. Sometimes, I shouldn't even say sometimes, almost all the time, needs to lose before it wins. So you might have that initial burst and have a really great season, like the Rangers in 92 when they won the President's Cup. And then, they were leading the Penguins there in the playoffs. And then the Ron Francis goal on Richter from mid-ice, and it all went down the tubes after that. And then 93, they didn't even make the playoffs. And Messier just stood by it. He goes, I've been through this before. Even if you have that one initial burst, you tend to have to lose before you win. And you gave a great example. Tampa was a great example of that. They kept, they were kind of there and then they weren't. They went to the final, lost to Chicago. And that's the way I felt about the Rangers after 2022. There was so much hype about the Rangers heading into last season. And I'll be honest, I knew that they were a good team and I expected them to have a good regular season. I didn't think that they were going to go as far in the playoffs as they did the year before, because I always had, listen, it's not me, it's Mark Messier in my ear. I trust Mark Messier. And if he says this is generally how it goes, that's why I felt the Devils too. Franchise record wins and points last season, right? And then knock off the Rangers in the first round. Okay, they got kicked in the teeth in the second round. I thought they were going to take a step back this year. I didn't think it'd be as bad as it's been for them. I still thought they were going to be a playoff team, but I thought that they were going to scuffle this year, that this was going to be their, all right, got to lose before you win, Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of that in play with the 23-24 Rangers. And that's why I think they're going to be, on top of the fact that they're a really good team, if they stay healthy, they are going to be a really, really difficult out in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, going back on Mess's point even more, what those the Islanders had to lose to the Rangers in the late 70s before they went on their run. The Oilers lost to the Islanders before they started their run. So, hey, there's a history that goes back and proves everything that you just said is true. Now, Jim, before we get out of here, Dan, I just want to see, do you have anything that you would like to ask?
Yeah. Who do you think is probably flying under the radar, but probably is going to be a very big factor in those playoffs and down stretch run?
For the Rangers?
Yeah.
So the first one I'm going to say here is not an under the radar guy, but I'm a firm believer, and I've said this on other interviews this year, that Igor Shesterkin is their single most important guy. Like, I get it. Artemi Panarin's got to raise his level of play in the playoffs, that find that consistent greatness that he provides every season during the regular season. So that's going to be important. Obviously, Mika getting going at 5-on-5, getting that top line sorted out, figuring out roles. All those things are important. But the single most important New York Ranger is Igor Shesterkin, because when you talk about great, if you have a great goalie in the playoffs, and I believe Shesterkin can be a great goalie, and he hasn't been great this year, certainly has been much better as of late. If you have that great goalie, man, that can change everything, right? Mentally on the opposition, but also just what it does for your team confidence, where he's stealing points, stealing wins in the regular season, and then takes it to another level in the playoffs. So I think he's the most important guy for them. But under the radar guy, I think Kaapo Kakko is an underrated guy. Under the radar guy. I shouldn't say underrated. Under the radar guy. Whether he's on that first line or third line, I think in the playoffs, I think you're going to see him on both, just depending on the way things go. But I think he can be a real under the radar guy. Big presence, gets in on the forecheck, wins puck battles, really good 5-on-5 player. He needs to score more. Like, to be the guy they need him to be, he needs to score more, and I get that. But his game, I believe, is suited to the playoffs, and I think he could be a really, really big factor for them throughout the postseason.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, actually. And we even saw a couple of years ago how he really looked like a big time player in those moments too. So I totally agree. And one last thing, Jim, I just want to ask you. I know it's been a very fun season so far. The Rangers right now have a 4-point lead in the division. Do you think that the Rangers are going to hold on and win their first division title in 9 years?
So I do. I think they're the best team in the division. And again, I will go back and lean on the goaltending. I think with Shesterkin and how well Quick has played, that gives them an advantage over any other team in the division, in my opinion. Within the conference, you can argue Boston matches up pretty darn well in goal with them. And listen, if Sergei Bobrovsky keeps playing at this level, Florida certainly meets the Rangers standard in that too. But I just like the Rangers goaltending better than I do Carolina. And I know Freddie Anderson's back now. I would assume it's going to take him a little while to find his full game. He's been out for so long. But that's going to be a big boost for Carolina, no question. But I think even at his best, Freddie Anderson's not Igor Shesterkin. Plus, I like Quick as the backup as well. I like the Ranger tandem better, which is really going to be big in the month of March because Rangers have a very, very heavy schedule, beginning with this 3 and 4 that comes up, right here, beginning with the St. Louis game. So I think the Rangers will be able to hold off Carolina. I'm not worried about the third place team. In fact, Philly could fall back. That's going to be the intriguing battle, I think. Not that Rangers Carolina won't be. And we'll get a look at Rangers against Carolina this coming week. But I think, that Islander Philadelphia battle for third place is going to be intriguing. And, I just don't think, especially now after the Tyler Toffoli trade, I'm not sure New Jersey's going to enter that mix. But listen, don't underestimate Carolina. That is a really good team that's now added Jake Gensel. You just got to wonder about the Kuznetsov move. As a player, I think maybe this could just, change the scenery and just a fresh opportunity with the team that's a legitimate cup contender could do wonders for him. But, we know he's had off ice issues. So we just don't know where his head's at. And what does that do to the chemistry of the Carolina Hurricanes? We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I do think it's going to go down to the wire, Rangers and Carolina, but I think the Rangers are going to hold on because they have the better goaltending. And of course, all of this changes if one team or the other has a massive injury, or hopefully neither team has that happen. But all things being equal, I would say the Ranger goaltending puts them over the top against Carolina.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that too. And that's absolutely makes total sense. Everything you just said, Jim. I think it's definitely going down to the wire. As much as I would love to see the Rangers win it by 10 points, I don't think that's going to happen. And especially with them getting Gunsel too. That's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. But hey, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. Before we get you out of here, do you have anything that you'd like to plug for yourself?
Fans can follow me, and they have been doing it for years, and I appreciate it at Jim Cerny. And certainly, this is a new venture for me going to Forever Blue Shirts. We're at foreverblueshirts.com. It's a great fun opportunity for me to go back and, cover the Rangers full time again. I spent the previous 5 years, working at NHL.com, but it was more of a desk job, as managing the site as opposed to, getting down and dirty. So this opportunity has been great for me. All my years working for the team, and before that, just being a reporter around the team, to be back doing that again is great. It's exciting, and hanging out with you guys and talking Rangers, it's just all so much fun. So, it would be awesome to have the fan support, at foreverblueshirts.com. I think we're doing some really good work over there, and hopefully the fans agree. And I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, and make sure to check out his podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Forever Blueshirts Radio, really great stuff there. Always very informative. Like he mentioned, the great Neil Smith interview is on there too. So make sure to check that out. And Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Daniel.
And that's right, everybody. We're back at you live now. That was an interview we recorded earlier today with the great Jim Cerny. Want to thank Jim for taking the time to come on with me and Dan. And Dan, how you doing right now, buddy? What's going on?
I'm doing good. That was just such a great interview. We were able to get him on and have all these insights into everything going on behind the scenes, covering the team, and also some insight into potentially how what we could expect going into the playoffs and into this stretch run.
Yeah, exactly. It's very nice of Jim to take that time out of his schedule for us, because obviously in the life of an NHL reporter and writer, this is a guy that's doing a podcast too. So during NHL trade deadline week, there's a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of long hours during the day, and for a lot of coffee drinking. So definitely got to give Jim credit for doing that for us. That was very nice of him doing that to do that, and very cool to have that. And so we're maybe we'll just keep it rolling along here right now, as we got a bunch of the Rangers stuff down. One last thing I figure we'll wrap up on the Rangers right now is we really didn't talk too much about the games coming up tonight. If you're watching this right now, as we're doing this live right now across multiple platforms on our social media and everything. The Rangers right now are going to be playing the St. Louis Blues tonight at 7:30 Madison Square Garden. As Jim mentioned in the interview, it looks like Matt Rempe is going to be in our lineup tonight. Jack Roslovic, who the Rangers acquired from Columbus, along with Alex Wenberg, who they acquired from Columbus in a separate deal. both set to make their Rangers debut tonight. I think the defenseman that they picked up from the Penguins is just going to be on the bench tonight, although they haven't confirmed that. There's a chance he also makes his debut. But Wenberg, Roslovic, definitely in the lineup tonight. Dan, are you excited for these debuts tonight?
Yeah, I'm excited for this tonight, seeing how this team I'm eager to see how this team goes now with the post trade, with the trade deadline edition. See how this team plays to get how this group plays together now. Just looking forward to it, and hopefully it turns out well. It's gonna be. There's not gonna be any calmness the rest of the run.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's definitely going to be a lot of fingernail biting and a lot of worrying about the Rangers for the rest of the year up until we get knocked out of the playoffs or we raise Lloyd Stanley Cup uh, over there in June. It's either going to be one or the other, heartbreak or your hero. So we'll see where they go from there. Obviously, head coach Peter Laviolette has been in a really good spot. Still 4 points up in the division. Dan, as I didn't even realize that me and you really didn't even give our thoughts when we asked Jim if the Rangers are going to hold on. I kind of wanted to get him out of there because he already gave us more time than we even asked for. Once again, thank you to the great Jim Cerny for taking that time for us. But Dan, Rangers 4 points up. All these moves now from Carolina. We only have a 4 point lead. Are you still confident the Rangers are going to hold on and win this division?
I'm very confident the Rangers are going to hold on and win this division. Of course, that's not going to make it easy. I haven't felt like this since with the Mets during the 2022 baseball season.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So it's going to be, and unfortunately, that 2022 baseball season ended with the Mets coughing up the division title. So let's just hope that doesn't happen this year. But hey, the Rangers look like one way or another we're hoping for a division title and home ice in that first round. But to be honest, the Rangers, as long as they get in, and just as we were talking about with Jim and everything, this is a dangerous team now that up their defense with the acquisition of Wenberg, and even though he's not a defenseman, he still is a forward that contributes very much defensively, especially in that third line. Playing for the Seattle Kraken last year, they went all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and he was a top six player for them. And most of the time, his line was being called out there to shut down the opposing team's number one line. So it just goes to show the amount of respect that his coaches and teammates have for him. That he's one of the top defensive forwards on the team, and they're going to treat him like that. And I think Laviolette really loves those type of guys that have that gritty nature to them. What do you think about that, Jim?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe Laviolette just, I feel like, played a factor into this move, and I'm hoping it pays dividends.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so I figured, what, we did a lot on the New York Rangers today. So we got a couple other things I want to get to in the second half of this show here before we close things out. As the Knicks last night came back after having a couple of days off. Knicks beat the Magic 98-74. They leapfrogged them in the Eastern Conference standings by half game. Just look at the score, 98-74. That looks like it's a game of 1995. We don't see games like that these days where both teams don't score 100, and not only that, one team didn't even break 80. So definitely not used to that from this era of basketball. But it was a nice, it was kind of refreshing to see the Knicks really came out and hammered the Magic defensively, and the return of Jalen Brunson, which definitely helped things out right there. He comes back and goes to 26 points. How you feel about the Knicks right now, Dan, after a pretty big win last night?
I feel very confident about this team. I just feel like this team is set to go on a good run. I mean, it looks like some of the guys I feel like because they've gotten some of the guys that have come back from injuries, they've gotten maybe a little bit of rest going to the playoffs. I think they'll be full steam. They'll have a lot of juice left in the playoffs. So this could be a very dangerous team.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. It's definitely going to be a dangerous team. this is a team that was they came just short of going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And to be honest, if it wasn't for Jimmy Butler really putting that Miami team on his back and carrying them there, I don't think they would have gotten past the Knicks. I think the Knicks would have been in the Eastern Conference Final last year, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. The Knicks, though, they have a pretty deep team now. Looking at the acquisitions of Burke and Bogdanovich, who I've been a big fan of Bogdanovich off the bench. I think he kind of started a little slow here, but it looks like he's getting into a little bit of a groove coming off the bench there and being like the next big six-man weapon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I just feel like that's what we're seeing, and it's gonna be a very difficult to calm down next couple of months, being the fact you have both our hockey team and our basketball team in the playoffs. It's gonna just be a lot of nervousness, a lot of sweating bullets. Might be looking like that scene in Airplane in front of only in front of the TV.
Yeah, exactly. Not trying to land this out of control aircraft. It's gonna be feeling like that though, as the Knicks and the Rangers, going at it in the playoffs again. It's going to be a really cool experience seeing how the Knicks end up um, rounding out now here. We mentioned the new acquisitions in Burks and Bogdanovich, but also too a guy who they did trade for mid-season, and also gotta say I love seeing R.J. Barrett and uh, Emmanuel Quickly both playing pretty well for themselves up in Toronto. But I'm a big fan of OG Anunoby, and it looks like he's going to be coming back relatively soon. He's been cleared for contact in practice, which was something that Thibodeau and the coaching staff had been waiting to hear about. But he's definitely set to make his return soon. I wouldn't expect to see him at the Garden tomorrow, but definitely sometime this week I could see OG coming back to the lineup, and that would be a big kick in the ass to this next lineup that desperately needs an infusion of you know top end talent. There's a bunch of guys in this team like Miles McBride and just guys of that ilk that are decent players. They're better than you and me, but they're not, and obviously professionals, but they're not top of the line talent that's going to get you far in the playoffs. OG is the type of guy that can do that, and him coming back is a big step in that direction, right there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm greatly looking forward to this. So
Yeah, exactly, man. It's going to be much anticipated, and also too, the other thing we got to keep in the back of our mind is that Julius Randle, we still really haven't heard any concrete news on when he's back. It's still believed that he'll be back sometime, maybe by the end of this month, definitely before the playoffs, they say. So he should get at least a couple of weeks to get back into playing game shape uh, prior to the postseason. But hey, as long as Julius comes back for the playoffs, that could be anything like the guy we see in the regular season. You know, this is a guy that we've seen average 23, 24 points a game in the regular season, but then when the playoffs start, his numbers drop to about 17 or 18. That can't be the case. We have to, if the Knicks are going to go on a big run, Julius Randle has to get healthy, and Julius Randle in the playoffs has to play like Julius Randle in the regular season, right?
Yep, exactly. He's got to put up those numbers and that he's been putting up in the regular season. He's got to put them up in the playoffs to get to keep to get to where we want to be. And I can tell you, it's going to be with all this. I don't want to jump the gun, but the idea of two of my favorite teams winning the championships shortly, not far apart. I think there might need to be a medic standing by because I might be in shock seeing this happen.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying. With the amount of with the amount of heartbreak that we've seen from our teams over the years, it would not surprise me one bit if anything like that happens. But yeah, Dan, you're definitely gonna have to have a medic on standby if our teams go on a little bit of a run. But what do you think? Um, the Knicks' biggest challenge is the before we move on from them. I mean, for Porzingis being in Boston is pretty big. But to be honest, other than that, I mean, and let's keep our focus on the Eastern Conference right now because we're not going to see any Western Conference teams unless they get to the final. But as for the Eastern Conference, I really only see Boston as the biggest hurdle for the Knicks to overcome. I think in a 7-game series, the Knicks could even take the Sixers. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, I think so. I think probably the toughest opponent could be Boston, but even that, I feel like the Knicks could grind that one out. But that I feel is going to be maybe the toughest opponent, not only in the Eastern Conference, but I think overall in the entire playoff run. I feel that's going to be the big one. That's going to be the tough opponent.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I feel like if they did run into a team like obviously if they get all the way to the NBA final and they ran into a team like Denver, that'd be pretty tough too. But hey, you can't take anything away from the Boston Celtics right now and the Knicks going up against them. And Boston has given the Knicks some nightmares this year. So definitely a lot to keep in mind when it comes to those teams moving up in the playoffs. It's been, I think it's been about 10 years since we saw a Knicks Celtics playoff series, and it'd be nice to knock them out again, just like we did a decade ago. So with Carmelo and the boys back then. So definitely a lot to keep in mind with that. And yeah, let's keep it rolling along though, Dan, as we'll turn our attention to some preseason baseball before we close things out here as the Mets ended up winning their fourth straight today, 9-3 over the Cardinals. I don't really take much stock in a winning streak in preseason, but it is nice to see the guys kind of coming together a little bit. We saw Shintaro Fujinami, how do you say his name, uh, make his debut today, and he looked pretty sharp. We saw you know, Lindor hit a nice home run today. Pete Alonso's been hitting a couple of bombs lately. So you guys be feeling pretty good right now. I mean, my hopes for the season is just kind of down in the dumps when you look at the overall ability on the team, especially in the pitching staff, is very down on their starting rotation. But seeing the guys come together a little bit, seeing a lot of these young players, it feels pretty good, right, so far?
Yeah, it feels good. I feel like I'm seeing maybe kind of the foundation laid for something, but like you've said, I feel it's going to really come down to the pitching. And right
Yeah.
now, there's just a lot of question marks. I do have to say though, recently Severino looked good supposedly, so just keeping my fingers crossed that he just has one of those bounce back years in a city that I think is difficult to have a comeback player of the year kind of season. I mean, that's like a lot of high pressure trying to do that in New York, where it's going to be magnified. It's a
No
lot
doubt about it.
different. It's a lot different trying to have a bounce back season somewhere else, where there's not that much expectations. Here, it's like the weight on the world's on you. Good luck, and I will give a lot of props to him if he can do that here.
Yeah, it's true, man. And how many times do you see a guy come from the Yankees that his value has been diminished as much as it was at Severino, and come here and perform at a very high level? You really don't see that. Even when the Mets signed Curtis Granderson a decade ago, and he's coming off that broken wrist, and a lot of people weren't too sure if he's going to rebound from it. I would say the expectations for Granderson were still a lot bigger than what we would be expecting from Severino this year. I mean, and Granderson ended up being a great free agent signing for the Mets. So I mean, if Severino can contribute to the Mets even half as much as Curtis Anderson did, then this contract is going to be a home run, right? I mean, because it's only $13 million, it's only 1 year. So if he does anything to make the Mets think that they should even bring him back next year, we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, right?
Yeah, and I just also feel like something has to be done. If this team is right there in still in contention at the trade deadline, that's going to be a real big thing that's gonna really be the crossroad between the outcome of the season is going to be decisions made at that trade deadline, depending where we are at that trade deadline, and we can't not stay put if we're right there on the cusp of contention.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that we really have to, as Mets fans, we really have to hold Steve Cohen to the fire. Where I know for some godforsaken reason, him and David Stern just want to throw this season out the window and turn the clock right to 2025, which is why I have decided not to give the Mets a penny of my money this year. Not that they care, because Steve Cohen has $15 billion, but I just refuse to support this team that is pretty much tanking this season. But yeah, if they're even within a couple of games of a playoff spot near the trade deadline, Mets fans have to be loud and let Cohen and David Stearns know that they have to pick somebody up to put this team in the next level. Because I don't want to spend July, August, and September, like it's 2012 or 2013, and watch a garbage team floundering, 20 games under 500. I can't do that again.
Yeah, exactly. It's just too tough having to see that. Also, what's going to also play a big factor. They got a surplus of catchers and a surplus of shortstops that I feel like they could make a move at the trading deadline. It's not like they're going to lose much depth.
That's a great point. And you know what? When you look at the surplus in catchers and shortstops that you mentioned, that puts the Mets in a good position to go out there and be able to pick up um, a pitcher. Because one thing that we've seen since Steve Cohen has taken over the team, it's that the pitching depth has been absolutely decimated. The only big name guy they've added has been Senga, who right now looks like he's not going to be pitching until at least Memorial Day, which is really not a good sign for the Mets. And when you look at everything right now at this rotation, if we're going to be saying that the top two guys in this rotation are Luis Severino and Jose Quintana, two, I guess, budget free agent signings for the last two seasons. Quintana was really only brought in as a fourth or fifth starter and a depth piece last year. Now he's being counted on as almost the ace. I mean, there's a legitimate chance Jose Quintana to be starting opening day. That is absurd, if you ask me, for the fact that the Mets have put themselves in this position.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I think it's absurd that they put themselves in this position. But then also, too, did you see that we got a little glimpse of Edwin Diaz on the mound this week? He has still not appeared in a Grapefruit League game, but he appeared in a backfield game facing Luis Angel Acuna, among others, for an inning to try to get his feet back under himself. First time they've seen him on a mound facing live hitters since the WBC last year when he got hurt, and he saved the game in Puerto Rico advance. That's the last time we saw him pitch in 2023. First time on the mound in 2024. How you feeling about Edwin Diaz coming back from this injury this year?
Well, so far he's doing well so far in the progress. Now comes the other big step is coming on that mound in spring training, and I expect that spring training game there's going to be probably one of the biggest standing ovations you will hear at a spring training game. I feel like.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Whenever he steps on the field, I mean, his first time back on the field in spring training, he's going to get a standing ovation. His first time back on the field at Citi Field, he's going to get a standing ovation. So let's just keep fingers crossed that we get the 2022, 2020, I guess really only 2022 version of the Met, 2018 version of the Seattle Mariners. Let's hope that we get that Edwin Diaz, because I got to be honest, that's one thing with this injury that kind of worries me. That I really just hope he doesn't kind of lose it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I hope he doesn't get his windup doesn't get out of whack and his mechanics. I really hope that he is back to the Edwin Diaz that Met fans fell in love with in 2022. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I hope he keeps that up because that's going to be greatly needed. I feel like last year that was the thing that really killed us is not having a bullpen, having to have guys that go in like earlier innings, go in the late innings. So it left us with the not much left when it got to the ninth because it was in everything but the kitchen sink bullpen, and that never goes well when we've had to rely on everything but the kitchen sink bullpen.
Now you're right about that, Dan. And yeah, before we wrap up here, let's do a little couple things with the Yankees, as I did want to take a look at them for a minute. As the Yankees ended up dropping another game today, 10-7 to the Minnesota Twins. They're now 5-9 in spring. Dan, should Yankee fans be concerned at all about this slow start, or is this just spring training?
It's just probably just a little spring training, probably just trying to get everything together. So I really can't say that they should be panicking really spring training. When it gets to the regular season, maybe if things are starting to turn out like this during the regular season, then maybe you just start hitting the panic button right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's too early. It's spring training. They're still working on a lot of things. We saw Daniel Vogelback take Garrett Cole deep last week and then really trot around the bases. And look, as Met fans, we know that that's got to be spring training because that's the only time that Vogelback looks like he's a decent player. As we'll see what he does in the regular season, but I don't think we're going to be seeing him hit too many home runs between April and September off of Garrett Cole. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Like you said, the Yankees are still dealing with with working some guys in slowly like the Mets are. So one of those guys too that they're going to be without actually that the news just came down today is that outfielder and back and forth between AAA and the major leagues, Oswaldo Peraza. He's going to be at 6 to 8 weeks, so that cuts into the Yankees outfield depth a little bit. What do you think about how missing this young piece in the Yankees lineup is going to affect them for the next 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. That's this one's gonna be maybe a bit of a hole going into the season. I feel like.
Yeah, because even if he wasn't expected to be a you know top of the line guy to go out there and play 150 games for the Yankees next year, because let's think about it. They have Verdugo, they have Stanton, they have Judge, they have Soto. So I know Stanton too is probably not going to spend too much outfield. He's mainly a deep point. But the Yankees have a lot of favorites in that outfield spot right now. But you know, Peraza being some young legs is a guy that you can send out there, and he's pretty sure-handed defensively. He's a switch hitter, so him getting back out there is definitely something that the Yankees want to get him back in the field as quickly as possible. Because even if he was going to start the season in AAA, which is a possibility, I mean, he could be on the bench for the Yankees, he could be in AAA, but even if he did start the season in AAA, then him not being there right now, all that does is hurt the Yankees organizational depth. You know, who knows what happens? Maybe Aaron Judge, except for that season when he hit 52 home runs and his rookie season when he hit 53, um, Aaron Judge usually deals with an injury or two during the regular season. So, who knows? Maybe he misses a month and they have to bring up a guy like Peraza. Maybe a guy like Juan Soto, who has dealt with injuries in his past, is going to have something like that. So it's always good to make sure that a guy like Peraza is healthy and ready to go because you never know when you're going to need it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it does affect the depth. If anything, if a circumstance like that happens, there's going to be some debt affected.
Yeah, man. And one last thing on the Yankees before we get out of here. Um, Jason Dominguez, one of the top prospects, is progressing nicely. After off-season surgery, he's already throwing from 75 feet. Now he's an outfielder, switch-hitting outfielder as well. This is a guy that was one of the top prospects in the Yankee system ever since they signed him, as I believe, like a 16-year-old. So this is a guy who's been in the Yankees organization for a long time. finally cracked the roster and made the team last year, but got hurt. And I believe he has Tommy John surgery. So he's, the fact that he is progressing like this right now, and even as an outfielder, Tommy John surgery is going to affect you for a little while. We saw what happened with Bryce Harper, where Bryce Harper came back. It might have been a little bit early. They said he was going to be back to the trade deadline. He came back at some point in May, and he didn't really look like himself until about July or August. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Yankees work this kid back in in their roster to get him healthy again.
Yeah, I just feel like this one maybe even though he's going to get back be playing in the big leagues again, I feel that's kind of part of the rehab process. It kind of goes beyond the time on the IL. There's a point of getting back to where you want to be after when you're in the majors. I just feel like you get a little rusty the longer you go without playing. So that's really a big part of the rehab process.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you don't play for that long. Sometimes if you stay active and healthy and everything, take care of yourself, actively, you can really set yourself back. So the Yankees having him looking this good already. When I believe he didn't have the surgery until about sometime in September. It's a pretty quick turnaround. Think about it. October, November, December, January, February, March. They're only about 6 months out. So it's definitely a big step in the right direction for Jason Dominguez in the Yankees. It's a good thing to see. Because look, maybe you aren't Yankee fans, but a young kid like this, you want to see him succeed. You don't wish anything bad about him because he plays for a team you don't like. So definitely all the best to Jason Dominguez coming back in the league. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. You don't wish this on anyone, and you gotta hope the guy comes back and recovers well.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And you know what? I think that's not going to do it for us today, Dan. Pretty good bonus show today we have. Hope everybody enjoyed us having a great Jim Cerny on earlier today. If you haven't seen it yet, you can either scroll back into this broadcast as we've been live on Twitch, X, and Instagram simultaneously. We also will be putting up the video on YouTube and Rumble and in audio podcast form later tonight. So keep a lookout for that. But Dan, before we get out of here, do you have anything like to plug for yourself?
Sure, I gotta plug my Instagram, my Twitter account Bobo103NYC, Instagram account Bobo718DK. It's the same username on Threads, and of course, one word, Daniel Curlin. And remember, if you subscribe to the Best Seat in the House podcast Patreon, you get early access to my YouTube videos. You also get access to the Bobo's Trackside Minute that I film usually the day after a race. Because depending, sometimes we're filming at the time I have the race recording on my DVR, but usually right as soon as I've been watching it, I film a Bobo's Trackside Minute. So so definitely don't check out that when you subscribe if you subscribe.
Absolutely. And again, by the way, was there a Bobo's Trackside Minute this week? Was there a race?
Yeah, there was. And I think I said one last week if I remember correctly. We had one last week, and we're.
Yeah, you said one
last.
We did. Yeah, but I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, there is one. There is going to be one this weekend, Phoenix. So
Okay,
so I'll definitely be filming a Bobo's Trackside Minute right after I've watched the Phoenix race. There'll be one covering all the action that happened out in the desert.
That's right. So be sure to keep a lookout for that. And if you're not subscribed to our Patreon already, it's only $5 a month. You can see it on the bottom. Or actually, I'm sorry, I was playing it earlier. But patreon.com/Best Seat in the House podcast. Only $5, and if you sign up, you get a free week trial, basically. So you don't get charged for a week. You can cancel anytime, and you can see what we have to offer on there. We'll be doing a live show tomorrow, like we always do, a Sunday Patreon show. So if you want to tune in for that, be sure to subscribe, and you'll be able to check that out with all the benefits of our Patreon page. So yeah, I think that's just going to do it for us, Dan. We appreciate everybody checking in on our live stream today. We appreciate the great Jim Cerny for joining us from foreverblueshirts.com. So thank everybody for tuning in. For Rob Kramer and Daniel Bobo Carlin, this is the Best Seat in the House podcast. I will catch you tomorrow on Patreon, everybody.